Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Chill Gates event, in which the Icy Portal is added to the game. So we have nearly a dozen teams to go show through everything out throughout the week. Though overall, the week itself doesn't have too much going on. Out of every single week this entire month, it is probably the most uneventful week as far as number of things occurring. Also because it's surrounded by Vault event weekend, so... has a really good week before and after. Of course, last week being the end of the campaign, next week being the start of the next campaign, and now we are right here in the middle where there is currently no campaign going on until next week. So we're really in the in-betweens right now as far as this week is concerned. I would say the biggest thing, actually not there, the biggest thing is probably the new Mythic. Of course, we covered a video on it last Friday going over everything really good with it. 4 times Fairy Fire, great for Tesla, great for Flower Dragon, great for Stellarix, great for pretty much anything that wants to do spell damage, which are a lot of teams these days. But yeah, this thing is still in drop table. It doesn't have a timer like most other things. I'm still not sure why it doesn't have one. But it ends on Friday Reset Day, which is basically the end of Thursday. But Friday Reset Day, you will no longer be able to get this in the only exclusive thing. It will be in the Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest afterwards. However, the chances of getting it specifically, of course, a lot lower. So realistically, you're going to have to event key for it during one of its event weeks, or get it in a Soul Forge for 4,000 diamonds in the future if you do not get it within the next few days. So highly advise, open all your vault keys that you got from last weekend, go and get the keys and go get a copy of it. This also means, of course, if you want to get mythics that aren't this mythic, make sure to wait till at least this Friday and wait until this is out the drop table so you can get the full wide drop table of everything else. But beyond that, yeah, pretty uneventful. We just have a raid event going on, a faction event for both this Tuesday and Friday, so we have double faction with a new faction troop and everything coming in this Friday. As far as the Icy Portal, I might as well go over this first. So the new troop. This thing is, in theory, good if it wasn't for the fact that the weapon that we're getting from the raid event this week is already better than it. If it wasn't for that weapon, then this might actually gotten some use case, but the weapon is just superior to it in most situations. But the premise of this troop's not bad. It ends up creating 6 freeze gems, which of course it freezes a enemy, or yourself, your own team, if the enemy ends up getting it, and then summons a Zoom troop. So overall, pretty average ability for 11 mana cost. Does feed back into itself. Biggest issue is the amount of gem spawns really low, but it is freeze gem, so it does have that going for it. Doesn't mean to freeze is synergized with it. Does get to inflict freeze on skull and has a decent amount of reduction. Of course, you'd be probably using this in like second slot, probably not first because you need something to go get resummoned overall. For the most part, you're not really going to be using this too much because we actually got a way superior version through the raid event. So if we go over to, if we go over to guild and go over to the raid boss course, we have this event going on. If you end up sending 250 gems, which I highly advise to be able to get everything you need, you get the raid troop, you get a bunch of resources, and of course you get this weapon. And this weapon is going to be used a lot. I think I use this for like 4 or 5 different teams that we're about to go over, but it is... well, it's not like anything over the top as far as the weapons, but it covers a lot of gaps within the kingdom. Ends up exploding all brown gems and grant a random status effect to all Zoom allies, and then summons a Zoom troop. Pretty standard explodey weapon, but it's one that this kingdom very needed to help put together a lot of teams that otherwise wouldn't be used. You're going to be using this in second slot for pretty much every event this week, or not every single one, but for raid event and for Underspire this week. This is probably going to be just the second, third slot on your team, and it'll just sit there the entire time doing a bunch of mana accumulation. Really great option for it, better than the new glory trip that we end up getting, and highly advise getting it. Of course, as far as the raid event itself, pretty standard. Just end up using the raid troop. You can upgrade it or not upgrade it, though upgrading it does gain extra benefit from the magic. However, you get the 2-time score regardless of how upgraded it is, and it just does a bunch of damage to the enemy, boosted by Zoom allies, which of course your entire team is forced to be pure Zoom, except for potentially hero, which if you're using a better hero class, you'll get slightly less bonus from it. That's fine, because Slayer, while decent for doing triple damage burning teams, oddly enough does not really have triple damage burning synergy within his own kingdom. The kingdom is very freeze heavy and not burn heavy. Which is, of course, pretty opposite of burn, or, freeze and burn. However, yeah, because of that, it doesn't really get much synergy with its own kingdom, oddly enough. Slayer hero class is really good for a bunch of teams, but not within its own kingdom currently. And even with the new troops coming out this week, that does not actually end up changing. With that being said, let's go over all the teams. So all of this will be in the description, as well as the pinned comment, and let's start all the way from the top. So as far as raid event, as we mentioned, it is a pure Zoom restriction. With that being said, of course, we will be using this Stonecaller as our main mana accumulation here, using Gem Dragon to go and Brown Gem Dragon in order to tank. This 55% score reduction, end up gaining a bunch of extra stats. Unfortunately, of the 3 categories of dragons, it does have the lowest amount of damage, but they also are the cheapest to get at only 500 Dragonite each per egg. So if you have one laying around, would work really well for this event. Of course, the low rated team doesn't end up utilizing it, but if you do have it laying around, pretty good tank while still doing good AoE damage. As far as the required troop, of course, as we mentioned earlier, he is boost ratioed by all Zoom allies, which is basically everything except your hero unless you're running Slayer class. And nothing really special otherwise. I guess he has a few immunities here and there, but for the most part, pretty standard Ray troop that just hits a little bit harder by a pretty static number, since as long as your entire team is alive, you'll be getting the full boost ratio for that. And a Lithian Servitor, just a nice standard AoE that helps cover purple. It's used for quite a few teams this week between the faction event tomorrow and just on filling the gaps within the kingdom. It's also a really great low rarity option because it's an epic, but it's also an epic that's available through Chaos Shards. So if you just go dump a bunch of Chaos Shards in Lithia, you should be able to get this thing pretty quickly. And you could definitely fill out teams with 2, 3 of these if you truly had to, in order to do a baseline for a team if you have don't have too many other options. As far as the low rarity team, we're using Ice Goblin here just for a little bit of extra turn. Also ends up getting a little bit extra damage against frozen enemies, which is Kingdom has quite a bit ways to freeze. Of course, as with all these teams, we will be using the new Stonecaller for mana accumulation. Actually, what are the extra perks on this? I didn't actually upgrade it. It gets stun, and that's it. It gets to stun the first enemy. Has a few other things too, but it's mostly just stun. I guess it gets to remove the barrier too, but you're already going to do that with Explode. But yeah, the only noteworthy thing is that it does get stun, so let's go upgrade that. But that's still nice, better than nothing. Still better, way better weapons out there as far as exploding weapons, but on this given week it is noteworthy. But given all exploding weapons, it's definitely on the lower end, but really good synergy within this current event week. And then beyond that, as we mentioned, Lithian Servitor, you could easily fill out slots. You could even double up, triple up if you want. Just make sure, of course, well, I guess double up in this case of this game mode, because you basically have to run Stonecallers. You need something for mana accumulation, and there aren't too many options. There are a few, but it's just going to be one of the more standard ones to end up running. Dougal, of course, you have to use for a raid event. For Underspire, you don't. But for raid event, it is required to use him because you need the double score, and he's also going to be really good at disposing of the boss with the up to 5 times extra damage and the double magic that he has. As far as the faction tomorrow, this is a blue-purple restriction for Lithia. With that being said, we can run pretty standard quick kill Atlanta team. You could triple up, run whatever hero class you want. We're just running Archmages here because it ends up giving a bunch of purple. But you can run whatever hero class you still need to go get EXP on. If it doesn't have 50% mana start, you can even change up the team a little bit, as long as your Atlantas are going to be tanky enough, which generally they should be. And then just go spam your Atlantas until you win, get your Leprechaun down, just cast everything and win. As far as the higher rarity team, both the 2 higher rarity teams I use for both factions are a different variant of Tesla team. I forget exactly which one I ended up showing last Friday. But yeah, Mistmother into Tesla, absurdly good. You're using Wand of Stars to do Curse, so regardless if they have immune or not, you can end up cursing them, which will end up removing any immunity they have to Fairy Fire. You then Fairy Fire them with a single extra turn, likely achieved from doing this cast to begin with, where your 7 Umbral Stars. You then go cast your Tesla and do 1 billion damage to them, as she does not gain any benefit from magic, but she does gain benefit from magic amplification. So this ends up scaling really well to deep level factions, and overall pretty easy to obtain as far as earlier on in the game. Obviously Mistmother this week, up until this Friday, all the way till the end of Thursday, easier to get than it normally would be. And Tesla, while not the easiest thing to get as a legend, it has, at least on PC Mobile, been in Soulforge about a month ago or so, a couple weeks ago. And hopefully we have an Adana event coming around soon, so we can end up getting it that way too. But hopefully have a Tesla laying around, really great overall option. And of course Leprechaun just for standard mana accumulation. As far as Spear faction here, we do have a newcomer. I believe this was from the new Deep Delve. Of course, we're going to be getting a new Deep Delve trip this Friday as well. But yeah, this is from the Deep Delve from one of the past events. And it ends up creating 9 purple gems. This was really nice because it helped fill out the mana accumulation. This place always had a bit of an issue with mana accumulation. You'd normally run like triple Lithian Servitor, but now you just feed it into purple as well. So of course, not required. You could still go triple Lithian Servitor. One thing that is a little bit required is having some kind of tank here though. This thing has 50% score reduction while also doing a bunch of magic reduction like most things do here, while gaining a bunch of life and armor. Unfortunately, no attack value, but at least it's really bulky, so your Lithian Servitors can go in. And you can either go a third of the Lithian Servitor or go a little bit extra purple mana accumulation, depending on which one you want to go down. And then just kill out the team by spamming a Lithian Servitor. As far as the Slayer class event, this is specifically dwarves from Zoom. For this, we're using an Empower into a bunch of pokes for that one battle that has resummon, so that you can end up poking it out with your 2 gem hammers. We're then using a little bit extra red mana accumulation just to feed into Dawnbringer or Summer's Fury or whatever red weapon you have. And in this case, we're just running a Dawnbringer just to go clear it out very quickly for the free 25 gems on Thursday class events. As far as Underspire this week, this is same as the raid event. It is a Zoom restriction. However, you do not have to use the Ray troop. You're allowed to use whatever you want. So here we're going a little bit more of a Skull build, doing a Glaceon plus a King Bloodhammer. We still have quick kill AoE for those earlier fights. We'll be using this a lot for the first 2 floors. But beyond that, you could even replace this out for a different tank if you want. Maybe even go for something that does extra damage to freeze or something else there. and just go for double damage, triple damage, whatever you want to set up here. But basically, this is mostly just to deal with the earlier fights, but later down, you're pretty much going all in Skull with Glaceon plus King Bloodhammer and going down the Skull route with your resummon off a weapon. Like, basically, the whole core of the team is Glaceon, Hammer into King Bloodhammer, and your first slot is kind of just there to speed up whatever current category you're in. So for the earlier areas, obviously full AoE one-shotting is pretty quick, and then for the later areas, while he does have 55% score reduction, you might want to make something that blocks mana a little bit less in order to go for something that does skulls a little bit better. But however you want to run it at the later end. As far as the Underspire for the low rarity, we do actually have the most accessible 65% score reduction troop in the game. Actually, I guess two of them. One of them is the one that you can end up sharding from, oh gosh, I forget where it is, but that one yellow-blue guy that has ice armor. He ends up having the most accessible one, but this is the most accessible one that is from a kingdom. It is an ultra rare. It is in the event key drop table this week, so really easy to get. If you throw even like 10 event keys, you're probably going to get them definitely within like 50-ish. And of course, you could buy 10 from the shop. I think I already did mine, but at 180 glory each, you could buy them in the shop as well if you haven't been doing that every single week for only 180 glory per event key up to 10. So that alone is pretty much enough to go get this guy. 65% score reduction, really nice, easy to trait because he's such a low rarity. And ability itself doesn't really do too much, deal some damage to an enemy and a bunch of freezes, but you're mostly using it for that 65% score reduction there. Beyond that, of course, with most of these teams are running Stonecaller. It's really good for this event week. You won't use it too much beyond this week, but really good for this current week. And you get it for 250 gems from the current raid event. And then we're just using a double Lithium Servitor from Alithia and just double spamming this in order to go kill out the enemy team. But yeah, let me go double check that one troop. The one I was talking about. Oh, we have cap block on. Oh no. But ice armor, what was this one troop called? But yeah, the other one, you can't use it for this event week, but if you ever want like a super other easy one, though this week you just throw some event keys to get it. It's from Frostfire Keep. It is the lowest rarity one, only at a rare. If you throw even like 5 Chaos Shard things or 5 portals at Frostfire Keep, you get this thing, super low rarity, super easy to obtain. You can do it with Chaos Shards at any time. And 65% score reduction, pretty nice. Has a lifesteal too. It's not bad. It's really good. Not used too often other than like super early game, but very solid, quite literally, given how tanky it is. Beyond that, where were we at? I lost track. Underspire, did we do 2 Underspire teams? Yeah, that was what we just were going over. Underspire low, yeah. Okay, anyways, next. So, the only other thing we have going on this week then is the new Delve. Actually, I didn't bother checking this. Can we see this on the spoiler thing? I haven't been using this too much. But if we go over to troop spoilers, oops, I shouldn't have clicked on the troop tabs. It's going to load too many. Go back, go back. Alright, wait. There we go. Alright, where are we? It should be this one right here. Drake Eggs, red, blue, 13 mana cost, dragon. Converts all purple gems to skulls and summons a random worm run troop. If this isn't power, that's actually insane. No. Okay, this thing is really average. However, you'd probably still use 1 copy of this. That's interesting. So convert all purple gems to skulls and summons a random worm run troop as a color of red and blue. Red and blue, red and blue. So this is the team in question. So yeah, that actually does fit in pretty well. You'd probably put that right here over where the second terror worm is. You would have this as a converter. So basically the whole, so Worm runs the event for this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It is a restriction of red and yellow. As far as your team, yeah, you'd probably replace out the second Terror Worm with the new troop. Also has 30% score reduction, so you can still end up using it that way as well. But basically, you have your Terror Worm, which ends up creating a bunch of attack and armor, boosted by skulls, and then does some bunch of mana accumulation. Has 50% score reduction, which is pretty nice. Then you would have that new egg that we were just going over as doing a convert and getting a bunch of skulls while also being decently tanky. And then you have your double skull creation, which stacks per each one of these. And you also have a little bit of AoE damage if you want to clean up a little bit, while also still having score reduction like pretty much everything here. So you had a new troop, that new red-blue egg, you would end up putting in your second slot here for the weekend event. Can't show it here because obviously it doesn't exist yet. You can still run this as well. This is definitely the safer method to make sure your Terror Worm doesn't die, but the other one would be quicker if you have high enough stats where your first slot isn't going to die. But if you do want to play it safer, this is probably still the team you would run over the other one, or even replace out your first Great Worm with the new egg, so you have a little bit more control where everything goes, and end up doing it that way, where you still keep the double Terror Worm, but you replace out one of the 2 Great Worms with your egg that's coming out this Friday. But either or ends up working out pretty well. As far as the standard teams, did pretty similar for these. We end up running an Atlanta Quick Kill for the low rarity again, just using Ihi Cattle for the Empower. And for the higher rarity team, we end up going with a Tesla, simply using Child of Summer, trying to get the immediate Empower convert so you can get the immediate extra turn, rather than going Leprechaun for the mass mana accumulation. But this is hoping that we have brown to red alignment. We end up getting it. We get Wand up, we get Tesla up. You then curse with your weapon if they have anything that has immune to Fairy Fire. And yeah, then just go Tesla and then boom, dead. and pretty much same premise as far as that team. And that's all the teams, all which are in the description below if you want to go and copy paste any of them. So beyond that, other things we have going on. Most of these we already went over, but Tuesday we have the faction event for Lithia, which is blue-purple. Wednesday we have ourselves the Dragzoom Pet. Thursday we have ourselves Slayer Hero class. Overall, Slayer is actually really good. In the context of its kingdom, it's pretty bad. I wish it would get better synergy, mostly because it needs things that can burn easily in the kingdom, which I believe there's almost none or literally none, not counting weapons. But yeah, it's really limited what it can end up using within its kingdom. But outside its kingdom, it's used for pretty much a lot of meta triple damage skull spam teams these days. If you're not running like an Entangle one or some other weird angle with like Web Spinner or something, triple damage burning with like Zolgoth, similar things like that, ends up doing a lot of value. And most of the quicker teams, unless you're running like a Lord of Slaughter or some other skull route, ends up utilizing this for the triple damage burning that you can get pretty easily just by casting Zolgoth once and then just kind of going crazy from there with whatever other skull spam you have on your team. As long as you don't have immune to burning, you're doing triple damage to every single thing that you end up hitting. And it has Enrage, so technically you're doing 4.5 times extra damage and hitting through whatever traits they have. So if they have 50% score reduction, 40% dodge, whatever they have, it is hitting through every single thing, as every single extra turn it takes is giving it re-enrage. So basically it has perpetual enrage, and I believe it even gains enrage upon an enemy dying. So even if you lose your extra turns, as long as you're getting your kill, you pretty much have an infinite state of enrage, while also having triple damage burning, while also having, you know, whatever else on your team to go assist it for a bunch of skull spam. So it ends up working out really well. But within its own kingdom has like near zero synergy, unfortunately. But outside of it, makes some of the best skull teams in the entire game. Though not as good as cast teams these days, as casting is very strong, even more so after the new Mythic that's still in drop table for a few more days. Beyond that, this Friday, as we mentioned, we have a faction event for Worm Run. Worm Run is a red-yellow restriction, and we'll be getting that new egg that has the skull convert. Unfortunately, not with Empower, so outside the context of the faction, is pretty much never going to get used. But inside the context of the faction, does end up replacing out one of your options that you would have previously used, so at least it is useful for the pure faction team, if nothing else. Beyond that, Soulforge, pretty average. Wouldn't say anything's a big outlier here. Yali for 4 times poison, but you don't really ever really need to use this mechanic too often. I don't think this is particularly noteworthy for Scorpius for the double insta-kill, where you cast twice and auto-win. But there's so many other ways to win these days quicker that not really needed. Beyond that, I'm not sure how many times Argera has rotated. Is either the first or second time that has ever rotated. But this thing is around. I believe this was this a Friday one, or was this I can't remember if this was a campaign one or not. Because generally whenever they only create one gem like this, I want to say they were a campaign one. So I don't remember, but if it was, yeah, I think this is the first or second time since the campaign that it has been available. Unfortunately, the troop itself is very average. And like most things in Soulforge this week, not really particularly relevant. Oh yeah, one thing that is relevant. Don't we have one of the weapons? Let me double check. I always forget this every single time and like double checking just in case. Just to make sure we don't forget about them. But Duskbringer, do you have... Yes, that's what I thought. I knew it. The Ack, I had a feel. It's like, wait, Dragzoom sounds like one that has it. Yes, there is one singular thing you want to go and make sure you craft in Soulforge this week. And it is the Ankh of Nefertani. This thing is not good. As far as what it does, it's pretty bad. However, you want to get it now, so that you can eventually down the line end up creating a Duskbringer. Even if you feel like you're never going to use Duskbringer, you still want to get the 3 components as they appear, similar to whenever they appear for the Ruby weapon. But you always want to make sure you go get all of their individual components whenever they rotate. And the main reason for this is whenever you do want to go and craft this thing, you'll have all the components and don't have to wait like an entire year for them to go rotate around. You'll simply have all 3 of them, and then whenever you eventually want to go get your Duskbringer, you can. Overall, Duskbringer doesn't have too much of a use case in the current state of the game. Has an interesting gimmick with 4 times Death Mark and everything like that. Also has a really high amount of base damage and is basically like Dawnbringer but slightly higher mana cost at 5 higher, which makes it a lot clunkier to use because you're getting barely any extra damage for 5 higher mana cost, which is not a small amount. Normally use Black Manacle instead. Unlike Dawnbringer, which gets used a lot, this gets used very rarely just because Black Manacle, like 9 times out of 10, is generally a better option than this. However, this does have some use cases for Thursday class events, like for instances where this does kill but Black Manacle doesn't have enough damage, and a few other very, very niche situations like that. But for the most part, it's a weapon that goes relatively unused, but still one on the list of things where you do want to prep all of the material for, whenever you see them coming around. So you do want to get the Ankh of Nefertani, even if you have zero intention of ever crafting this. So in case this weapon ever is good, maybe for the 4x def mark or in some other weird game mode, or even in a Droxzoom a Kedar restriction. I forgot, this is even a Droxzoom thing, this is a Kedar thing. But, you know, there might be some niche situations where you might end up using it in the future, so get the 3 components when they rotate around and eventually get the Duskbringer, but at least get the components whenever they are around, like this Ankh, so that you can end up getting it in the future, just to not have to go and backtrack for them. But yeah, it's the only really noteworthy thing in the entirety of Soulforge. Just make sure to go get the Ankh so you can eventually get your Duskbringer. Anyways, beyond that, what have we not gone over? Of course, there's no campaign this week. This is a pretty dead week as far as stuff. No campaign, pretty much the in-between week before everything going around. This is normally where they would put an update, though we did have a Guild War update pretty recently. So unfortunately, no update. But or who knows? Maybe we'll find out tomorrow. But no, it is very unlikely. This is like the miniature of miniest updates ever. But yeah, this is just a really between week with not too much going on. Beyond that, we already went over raid event. Just use Droxzoom team. Make sure to use the new guy. Make sure to get the weapon. Really good for a lot of game modes this week. 250 gems for that. You probably have that just from a couple vault keys that you have laying around from last vault weekend. Oh yeah, event key drop table. So as far as event key drop table, it is Droxzoom. So let's go over the gigantic laundry list that is every single thing that is not in drop table. I don't think this kingdom's as long, I say, as there's probably like 10 things on this list. So the things that are not in the event key drop table include the Doom Stone. This is only from Brown Doom. The 5 faction troops from Alithia, they're only from the Alithia from throwing chaos shards at the portal. The Troop of Dugol, he will be in the event key drop table later down the line. However, for this current event week, he is not. You can only get him from spending gems in the current raid event. You get one at, what is it, like 100 gems? You end up getting your first one. And you can just double orb that one and just use that guy because you don't really need to double up on him, especially for raid event. In invasion events, you sometimes do, but for raid event, you only ever need one, as one is more than enough to deal with the boss. But he is not in drop table. And the other thing that is not in drop table is, of course, the brown gem dragon, which is only from the gem dragon drop table for 500 Dragonite each in Soulforge, with a 1 in 6 chance that you end up getting him specifically. But overall, is it worth opening event keys? Not really. There are 3 mythics here, one of which is a good stun utility that you use occasionally, but it's very rare these days. There's so many other ways to stun, and more often than not, if you really need stun, you're running Elementalist and just getting a billion other effects too. Obviously, it doesn't have 4 times stun compared to this, but generally you're getting way more value from running Elementalist than you are from this in most situations. The only time you really run this guy is if it's really important to 4 times curse stun the opposing team, if they have really good traits that you want to go override, if they have Impervious to try to protect it, but you want curse stun immediately to go deal with it. In those kind of situations, it can be pretty good, but then you're sacrificing half your team just for curse stun, which is a lot of team to be sacrificing just for curse stun. Though you could do it pretty conveniently these days using Wand of Stars plus him. You don't need to do some kind of other dead troop for curse. You can end up doing just Wand of Stars into him and then have 2 other utilities. So he's still useful. It's just very niche that you would need to bring him out, but there are some situations where you can still be good. The other 2 are pretty bad though. Fallen Valdis is pretty notoriously, even when Divines were the meta, wasn't even used at all, and she's basically a Divine counter that can't even properly counter Divines. And the other guy, he does have an interesting Perpetual Doomstorm. There are some use cases for him. The biggest issue is really high mana cost for overall what his ability is doing. But he can be used in some Skull Spam teams if you really want a Doomstorm. But generally speaking, having a Perpetual Skull Storm is actually better than a Doomstorm, as less Doom Skulls will appear compared to Skull Storm. So if you had to choose between one or the other, Perpetual Skull Storm is way better than Doom Skull Storm, or even in the case of Uber Doom Skull Storm, because they get way less gems. Even though the gems are powerful, they spawn way less often. So you normally want to go a normal Skull Storm in order to get more skulls on the board. Even though the skulls that you're getting from him are more value, you're generally wanting higher amount of extra turns, which that does not end up doing. There are a few other Skull Spam things that from this kingdom, like Laceon and King Bloodhammer. I believe the high rarity for Underspire even use both of them. They're a pretty notorious combo that's been since day 1 of Droxzoom, and still to this day pretty good, even though Doomstorm itself has been nerfed like a billion times. But the combo of the 2 of them is still really good during Droxzoom events, so you don't tend to use them too much outside that. And beyond that, nothing really too noteworthy. I guess like a few low rarity things that you would get as a newer player if you don't already have, like really high score reduction troops, but for the most part, nothing really used too much. It's a really average kingdom that only has a few okay high rarity stuff here and there. And for the most part, unless you're trying to get a specific star level from the kingdom, it is a pretty good week to simply just skip on the event key drop table. And is that everything? I think that is everything. Oh yeah, also by the way, when I was talking about event keys, they're over here by the way. If you go to shop and then to resources, they're all the way to the left here. It doesn't show it here because it disappears after you buy it on a given week, but it's all the way over there for 180 glory each. And of course we have our weekly troop, which we already went over, but it's basically a resummoner that's worse than the explodey weapon. If you want resummon this week, just use the explodey weapon. It's better mana accumulation, it's better summon. Actually, technically it's the same summon. They both summon a random Drugzoon troop, so technically not a better summon, but it has better extra turn rate, has better mana accumulation rate than bothering to use Icy Portal. So unfortunately, Icy Portal came in the exact same week where a better option came. Kind of funny that they added two of the same, but one was better than the other. So the only reason you would use this if you want a specific weapon on hero, but there's not enough good Drugzoon weapons where it'd really justify running this instead. So you'd be better off just running the new explodey weapon from the raid event. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for now. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave in the comment section below. Feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps a lot and is greatly appreciated. And as we mentioned, of course, in the description and pinned comment are all the teams that we went over, all 11 of them, I believe. So if you want to use them for anything throughout the entire week, feel free to copy paste them. And of course, biggest thing this entire week, other than Soul Forge, two biggest things. If there's any wrap up to do as far as summarizing everything, two things you should 100% do this week, aside from, you know, standard dailies and all that. Make sure to go get the Anchor of Nefertani, so you can eventually get your Duskbringer if you don't already have it. And if you don't already have it, try using some of the resources that you got from last Vault Event weekend, as well as just in general, to go and craft the Mistmother. Really, really great Mythic. Fairy Fire onto all enemies for 50% extra spell damage. Really strong, especially since we're in a spell meta right now, not a scroll meta. This might change a little bit later this year with some of the things that they have planned. However, as it currently stands, spell meta is pretty much the entire game. And this thing just makes everything you do 50% stronger. There are teams that can one-shot Explore 12. There are teams that can one-shot with Tesla for pretty much every game mode. A lot of really, really great things that you can end up doing with this. Very strong troop, and highly, highly, highly advise getting it, as it will never be easier to obtain than these next few days, all the way until Friday reset, basically end of Thursday. So highly advise getting it. You still will be able to get it in the future, but you'd probably just have to save 4,000 gems and wait until it rotates around in several months from now. Could even be next year by the time it rotates around, because honestly, we're getting a lot of Mythics in the game. I think it's like a 4-month rotation or something, and obviously it's not even in this current rotation, so it'll be quite a while to be able to get this thing in Diamonds. And you'll also be able to event key for it when it does rotate around. I believe it's from, what, Bright Forest is that? So you'll be able to go and event key. Actually, I actually completely forget. Wait, let's see. It is Bright Forest, right? I'm pretty sure it is. Am I going crazy? It's either that or Silverglade. Mistmother. It is... added a dash. I was like, wait, that's definitely correct. Yeah, it is Bright Forest. Okay, I was just making sure. But yeah, it is Bright Forest. So next Bright Forest event, you should be able to event key for it, especially if it's like a couple months from now. Otherwise, you'd have to wait for 4,000 diamonds if you don't end up getting it within the next few days. But highly, highly advise getting it. Really strong. And yeah, a lot of great things to use it for. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching.